Thank you so much for joining us. Hello, all my students. I'm really excited to share the next 50 minutes with you folks and our two esteemed guests. These are CSU Communication Studies alumni. We have, I'm just going to go according to how your tiles are arranged for me. So first, we have James Crowe, alum 1997. James has spent more than 19 years of his career as an entrepreneur in some both diverse and challenging Colorado work environments. He spent 10 years as the CEO of a bail bonding company he founded, another 9 years as a CEO of a traffic control company for heavy highway construction. And in 2017, James rejoined corporate America and accepted a position as a business development executive for a supply chain engineering and logistics consulting company. They moved him and his family out to York, Pennsylvania, where he currently resides and where he's currently calling us from. And then our second esteemed alum and guest for the time here is Anthony Grimes, alum 2007. So Anthony has been instrumental in forming movements that shape culture in a variety of arenas. Grimes founded the Denver Freedom Riders to support the Ferguson and Baltimore uprisings. He was honored as a keynote speaker in the 2014 MLK Parade. As a filmmaker, he is the executive producer of Mr. Somebody, a biopic set in the streets of Watts, Los Angeles. He produced To the Muse, filmed in Cuba, a film that highlights the story of a boy who defies all odds to pursue his passion in music. Give me some support in welcoming our guests with a round of applause. Oh, I miss being in the room with other people and hearing clapping and laughter and everything else. So I've invited our guests to start off the panel first by just sort of sharing a little bit about their upbringing, their background, their time at CSU, and how that time sort of set them on the path to their current career endeavors. After a bit of our guests getting to share some background about themselves, I'll open up the floor for questions from my students in my capstone class. And folks, if you wouldn't mind, either, well, let's see, the raise hand function should be activated on here, Carol, yes? Let's see. Reaction.
Yeah, you get to it through the participant screen.
Yep, there are folks, if you wouldn't mind using the raise hand function, there's an option on the reactions button there. I'll try to get to you as I see your raised hands. All right, I'll invite James to start things off by sharing a bit about his background. Go ahead.
Sure. So, well, first of all, I'm 47. So, I was born in Detroit, Michigan. Left Detroit with my family when I was roughly 10 years old. Moved to California for almost 4 years, and my aunt, who's my mother's just best friend, ended up getting a position out in Denver, Colorado, and my uncle, her husband, his position transferred him out, and they, my mother and my aunt, again, they were really close, so my mother wanted to be out this way, and so we ended up moving here from California back in like 1984. So I grew up, I consider Aurora and Denver home. It's home for me. I mean, I grew up going to all public schools in Aurora, and then ended up going on to Colorado State University. I was there from basically, I graduated from Colorado State in 97, so a ton of years ago. But I really just enjoyed my time at CSU. I had a lot of people who really poured into me in the speech communications department specifically. It wasn't called communication studies back then. It was my degree is in speech communications. That's what it was called. But I just had a lot of people who really poured into me. It was a little bit challenging back in the day because, when I went to Colorado State, it was probably like 24,000 students, but probably maybe like 350 or less were actually Black students. So it was, that piece of it was challenging. But even with that being said, I think the students that were there were just warm and good folks. And again, people in the speech communications department, specifically Dr. Gill and Dr. Denny Phillips at the time. Trying to think who else was there. Jim Irvin at the time, Dr. Irvin, all of these people, Dr. Mac McLaughlin. These were all people who were really just good people and really, like I said, really poured into me and made my experience there valuable. So I really just appreciated it.
Great, thank you, James. I'll invite Anthony to share the same, a bit about your backstory, your time at CSU, and maybe some of how that time here set you on your current career path.
I get goosebumps thinking about my time at CSU with the speech communication department, and particularly Professor Greg Dickinson, who in many ways changed my life. I kind of switched to speech communication as somewhat of a throwaway major. I went to school thinking I was going to become a doctor, and I took one semester of organic chemistry and was like, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. And I was also an athlete for a second. I walked on the team, go to practices, and was a little bit lost, to be real with you, when I first came to CSU. Almost flunked out my freshman year and risked losing my scholarship. I was a first generation scholar, a little bit too much partying, a little bit too much messing with the wrong crowd. And my sophomore year, I decided I want to get serious about school. And I switched to speech communication, and I just get, like I said, goosebumps thinking about the weight of Professor Dickinson's classes and wrestling with what it meant to be human, what it meant to deal with words and speech, and how that literally shaped the world and our existence, how that made us unique from every other species on the planet. And I remember as a student thinking that I don't know how this is going to apply to my life directly, but I remember that it was, at that point, education to me became real. It became a lot more than testing and learning and memorizing. It was about literally shaping myself to be a participant in the world, and not just the world stopped being something that happened to me, and it started to become something that I was actually involved in shaping. So my existence growing up, a lot of it felt as though things were happening to me all around me. And so I grew up in the middle of Park Hill. James and I just spoke about this. Park Hill in the 90s was somewhat of a complex place, I think you could say. I was in the middle of a gang war. Bloods and the Crips were definitely going at it back in the 90s. They called in 1993 the Summer of Violence. Of course, if you look at the stats, 1993 wasn't the most violent summer in Denver. It was the summer that things began to creep outside of the Black neighborhoods, and people in white, middle to upper class neighborhoods started getting impacted by the gang violence that we had been dealing with for years. Black people and poor people have been dealing with for years. But it became a media campaign once a couple of white families were shot at. And I remember the entire city rallying around, what does it mean to be tough on crime in Black neighborhoods? And we became part of, the larger rhetoric of law and order in our society. My parents raised me in a village. And so I grew up in many ways in a dangerous place, but also in a place where I felt protected by a village of people outside every day. I knew every kid on my neighborhood. People weren't afraid to come up to you when you're doing something wrong and just correct you and say, I think you're going the wrong way. And so I'm thankful for people like that in my upbringing, starting with my mom. But, you know, when you're in situations like that, other people become your adopted family. I think about Mrs. Love, my third grade teacher. My second grade teacher actually thought I was slow because I couldn't speak, ironically, graduating for speech communication in 2007. But when I was, you know, however old in second grade, I couldn't speak properly. And I was at risk of going to remedial classes and being called slow in public schools. That's almost a death wish in some cases. And so I made it to the third grade somehow. And Mrs. Love, who was my first Black teacher I've ever had, believed in me. And she paired me up with the so-called gifted kids. And she had a way of teaching where it involved my context and my community. And she would reach out to my mother, and she was a real educator. And by the end of that year, Mrs. Love loved me, and I became neck and neck with the kids that were formerly called gifted. I will just stop by saying that for me, you know, CSU was mixed in my experience, but I will say that for me, it had some of the best people in the country that I've ever met. And I've been around the world, and what it set me up for was really encountering people that helped me to think about what it really meant to be educated, and never confuse schooling with education, because those are two different things. I learned how to think critically about my life and myself and the change I wanted to make. And my career has been in different arenas. So I've been a human rights activist. We started a movement that really did impact the entire nation here in Denver. I've been in different places in boardrooms. I'm currently at a tech company for my 9-to-5 job, talking about Kubernetes, which is a very technical, complex technology. But all along the way, the ability to talk to people, to speak, is a skill that I've carried with me, whether it's speaking to a keynote of thousands of people or delivering a presentation in a board meeting and trying to get my point across. It really has been a major that changed my life and went from a throwaway major to a skill that I would not trade in for anything in the world.
Thank you, James and Anthony. I want to sort of get some of the Q&A going by asking you a really sort of specific practical question, and maybe we can build out from there. It's something that I hear from our graduating seniors all the time, so everybody in the class is on their way out of CSU. I wonder if you might both share a bit about that immediate aftermath of graduating, what your lives looked like then, how you envisioned taking the next step away from college into the workspace. Were you immediately looking for your career? Was it a transitional moment in other arenas of your life? Kind of put yourselves in that post-graduation moment for the rest of the folks on the call here and narrate some of that. I'll let either of you sort of chime in here.
Sure. So for me, like, my mother, she worked a job for, 26 years. But we still grew up pretty humbly. So for me and a lot of my friends who immediately graduated from college, we were like thrust in the workforce immediately. It wasn't one of those deals where I had the opportunity to kind of just, feel things out and really even look for the thing that was my passion per se. I got out of college and bills needed to be paid. And so I immediately went to, I was looking for work. None of the work that I was looking for had anything to do with, I feel like who I was or who I was interested in becoming. It was just immediately to start bringing in a paycheck. And so I got out of, graduated from school, and I ended up taking a position at a telecom, basically like a telecom reseller back in the day. I was in Denver, called Teletech. And to me, it was like, it was funny because it was the most money that I had made, being so young, but it was such a draining, like just life draining position. So it was really like one of those things where I looked at it like, I mean, is this what I'm supposed to be? Is this what my college experience is supposed to turn into? So that was pretty tough for me. Like, I think that again, my experience with people around me who were graduating at the same time, most of us were thrusted immediately into the workforce, and it wasn't to positions that we really necessarily wanted to be in. That took some time and figuring out who we were, or figuring out who I am to be in something else, basically.
And before, I just want to follow up with James real quick. When did you feel like you landed in a spot that was kind of where you wanted to be? How long was it? Was it a new position or place?
So when I started my bail bonding company back in 1998, like, I don't necessarily know, it wasn't that I wanted to be a bail bondsman per se. It was that I knew people who were doing it and making a good living, and that's what kind of drove me to it. The entrepreneurship piece of it, like the working for myself, because at that point, I mean, I had started to see quickly that, young guy coming out of college, I mean, you really could be in some dead end positions for a really like long period of time, especially, I feel like, especially as, well, anybody, but I mean, as a Black male, for sure, you can be in some really like dead end jobs for a really long period of time. So like, even with the bail bonding, like that wasn't my passion per se. And looking back on it, I don't really look at it. I look back on it fondly because I feel like the most important lessons that I learned about life, I learned through that business, but I don't look back on that business like, oh my God, like, this is the culmination of my passion, because it was not. But entrepreneurship is a passion of mine, and like job creation is a passion of mine. So that was my first endeavor to be a part of creating a business, creating something that could sustain me at the time, and then my family, later on when I got married. So yeah. I hope that helps.
Yeah, Anthony, go ahead. So that immediate post-graduation experience, what were you doing? How did you make that transition?
Yeah, I kind of went the opposite route. So I'm an experiment of what it's like just to follow your gut and your passion, and end up broke for a lot of years and hopefully make a way out of that. I think my first job at a college I was actually a peer mentor in a school. And I think that was the most traditional job I had for a while. I ended up teaching where it was called Colorado Uplift. We taught at the high school, middle school, and elementary school level. And I worked there for a little over a year. And then I actually thought I was going to start a church. You know, I was very religious at the time and was walking towards that route. Went to seminary for a while, or for a long while, and I was very. I had the opportunity to work within some nonprofit umbrellas, in one particularly where they allowed me to start my own initiatives and formulate these passion projects for communities and raise money to do it. And so that's hard. It's equivalent almost to starting a business where you're having to make a business plan, make an operational plan, and really go out and sell that idea to people even before it's happening. And ended up doing some initiatives through there that impacted the community I was from. And from there, that's when the stuff with the movement happened. So the movement for Black Lives, I decided I was going to go fly into Ferguson by myself and help out with the uprisings there. Again, I'm following my gut, following my call. And that ended up turning into an organization that, again, I was able to sustain and fundraise for during that time. I actually didn't make a dime for myself during that time. And so I had to do different odd jobs to hustle and make that work because I didn't feel comfortable having that be my living. And it wasn't until recently, I think once you do get children, you know, and do have a mortgage, you have to begin to think differently about life. And so I did make the change to go into a more traditional space recently as a way of funding my film projects. So my passion at this point is making films and creating in that way. And I'm starting my own creative studio. So I went from wanting to start a church to wanting to start a business. And it's gone well so far. But, you know, for me, I always wanted to just work backwards with like, what do I love to do? What's my joy? Where's my joy come from? And how to go make that happen? Because, you know, life is short and I definitely didn't want to get trapped in the matrix. And so I've been really thankful that life has worked out to where I've gotten to do those things, the things I love to do. It's definitely risky. And you're going to have some times where like when you eat what you kill and you don't get anything, then you do go hungry. So I've been thankful to have support mechanisms where I've been able to make that happen. And it takes years to really build things from scratch, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
I think I have one more question for you both before I invite my students to chime in. And you've both touched on this in some respect, but wonder if you could elaborate. What specific skill or experience do you sort of carry with you from your time here, either as a speech communication studies major, or just from your university experience into the workplace? So a lot of times our, you know, seniors graduating may have anxiety because you don't have like the job named after the major that you're a part of, right? But we train students here to speak, think, and write all the time and encourage them to apply that in any number of professional contexts. How did one specific skill you honed here sort of translate to your post-university lives?
For me, I think, I mean, I really think that Anthony touched on it earlier, just the being able to like speak to anybody in the room, being able to communicate effectively to others. I feel like that's, I mean, to me, that's the nugget, that's the gem. I think that with the speech comm degree, I know that there's like anxiety sometimes about it being more general in a society that weighs heavily towards specialization. But like, I feel like any of the positions that I've gotten, and I've worked in some very, very diverse work environments, I don't feel like I could have gotten those positions with another degree besides speech communications. I feel like, or, you know, communication studies. I just feel like being able to like reason and, like talk to people, and, the rhetorical piece, and just the debate. But again, the interpersonal communications piece, I feel like it's such a big part of what got me employment in the first place. So I think that that's what I would take from it. And I think that your students are definitely in the right place for that. And I think that it'll propel them forward if they use it correctly.
Yeah, I gotta definitely, what James just said resonates with me, where it's like, I deal with technology, I work with engineers every day. The things that are coming out will blow you away in 20 years. Like, there will be robots that can design music better than composers today. And we're growing into a highly automated society where in 10 years, they're predicting billions of jobs to be lost to automation. And you have to really think about, in previous decades, we were competing against other Americans for jobs, right? In the age of globalization, social media, the world shrank to where now we're competing against some kid in Africa or China or wherever for a job in the future. Now we add robots into the mix, and we're literally competing with artificial intelligence in some ways in our society. So what makes us different? And I think the ability to empathetically and passionately communicate your ideas, to live in story, to have connecting dots across disparate things, that is only going to increase, the need for that's going to increase. And so it's just like, I deal with a product right now that I couldn't explain in a minute. However, when it's time to go into a boardroom and raise money, we're going through a Series B funding round for my company. There has to be an ability to like present that in a way that people are going to believe it, and present that in a way where it's a compelling story. And there has been studies done, study after study done, as to like how human beings retain information better when we can tell it through story. Literally, your endorphins increase, your attention span increases when you're told a compelling story. And so far, humans have a hold on that skill. And that is a skill that was first rooted in me in CSU, of course, in my family growing up, but CSU, and like I said, Professor Dickinson, and there were others, Michelle Halling, Brian Ott. There are people at that school who are world-class educators that changed my life and many of my peers as well.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing those thoughts so far. I want to open up to my students. If you'd like to ask James and Anthony any specific questions, go ahead and use the raise hand function on the bottom, or maybe you could probably just unmute and ask. Janie's got her hand raised first there. Go ahead, Janie.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask both of you, what piece of advice would you give to students who are graduating or soon to be graduating? We have like 3 months left, so what's the best piece of advice you'd give yourself?
I think, is it okay if I answer first, Anthony, or? I think I would say that my biggest advice would be, like, students have their greatest resource that they really don't do enough taking advantage of. So like your peers are the absolute best networking resource that you can have ongoing. And what I would recommend is to stay in close contact with with your friends, with people from the from the department, but your other the other students, your peers, like that you're cool with. I would say definitely just like stay in contact with them, because you guys can really build a network and again, help each other out as your careers progress. So, I mean, the networking piece is huge. That's how I feel like that's how things really happen. You know, people like I've gotten positions through my friends. The positions that paid me the most were gotten because I knew somebody who were able to help me get it. So I would say use your friends, just use your network. I would also say though, like if you have to choose between like taking a job that doesn't suck but pays really well versus like taking a job that is awesome and in line with who you are or who you want to be, that really can turn into something again that you love, like take that one, take choice B. Like I think for me, I think I spent way too much time out of college, like just on the paper chase, trying to make money. And I didn't necessarily like take positions that were really in line with who I was or, you know, who I wanted to be. And that were impactful. And I think if there was anything that I would tell a young person coming out, because I know how it is, a young person wants to get out and you want to make money and you want to, you know, do all these things, but really like look for impact, look for how you can be impactful and something that is like, do something that is awesome, something that is life-giving, basically. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, for me, I agree. The network at your school, the network of your peers is the most powerful resource. When we hire people, we give preference to preferred hires, to recommended hires. And so if I'm at a job and I know someone awesome that can do that job and I encourage them to apply, they're going to get more looks because of that. And that comes from your network. I would say to add color to that, like when you're networking, think about how you can provide value to the person across from you. And so a lot of time with network, we use our network, but it's a two-way street. And so one question I like to ask people in a business meeting or when I'm doing a one-on-one coffee with them is, how can I help you, right? And so that question over time will add up for you. Of course, it's got to be genuine. You got to have a value to provide, but think about the value that you can provide people and how you can begin to leverage some of your resources, particularly for other people. And that will come back. You know, people do remember people that move like that. And I would say also, as you graduate and you start to think, first of all, if you're graduating in 3 months, congratulations, because that's huge. And I'm reminded this is a senior capstone class. So congratulations to all of you. That's a big accomplishment. Just thinking about what are the practical skills that you need to live right now, right? So some of us, after college, we have never balanced a checkbook. Of course, I don't even know. Do y'all have checkbooks right now? Do you know what those are? Those are going extinct, I was told. But just knowing the basic skills of life, it'll hit you hard. Hopefully by your senior year, you begin to do some of that. But adding on to your degree, the real practical skills are going to help you live. How do you fix things? How do you pay a mortgage? Doing research around that. And so I think just taking that first year to settle into your life as you also settle into your career is an important thing.
I love that point about asking questions about how you can provide value, how you can help is super important. A lot of times the impulse is to enter a new room and say, here's what I'm all about, you know, with the implication that you're owed something or you want to demand something, but asking questions and asking about how you can help is a great way to frame that. Leslie has her hand up. Go ahead.
If I can add something on that real quick, Nick.
Sure.
When you're at a job, I think it's also important to remember that, you know, if you're not adding value, you're expendable. And so I think that's something we got to keep coming back to is like, how am I really adding value to this position? No one owes you something because you have the position. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, we live in capitalism where if you're expendable, it's the next person up. And so really learning how to communicate your value in a way that is effective is an important skill that you'll keep with you as you go to these different positions too.
Great. I have Leslie, Matt, and then Peter.
Sorry, give me just a second. There it goes. How's it going, everyone? So this is my second time coming back to college to get my bachelor's. So 26 finally getting it, which did the thing. But with that, I've gotten a lot of workplace experience. I'm actually in a job in the field I wanted. You'd consider it an adult job, right, with benefits and all that. But I feel like I don't know what my next step is. And so I guess my question for you guys is, if there was something that you could change or like some job you could just avoid ever doing, what would it be and why?
And then you can go first, man. I've like jumped in first every time.
You know, I think just do as much as you can when you can. You know, like we're in the age of the side hustle, and you know, we've got to really understand that where picking up knowledge here and there's nothing wrong with that. And so I've had jobs. I was telling a story the other day. I was working on a campaign job, and we were raising money to basically help public school education in Denver. And I'm ashamed to even admit this, but Cam the Ram, I guess the guy who did Cam the Ram had passed away, something like that. And he happened to be tall. And so I'm 6'4", and we're at this campaign rally, and they want to do a commercial for this campaign, and they want Cam the Ram to be in it, but he just died. So they're like, we need someone else to replace him, and everyone's looking at me. And so I end up getting this gig to be Cam the Ram in a commercial. And so like I put on the whole mascot thing, and I had to like do all this like in the middle of the street basically and do this Cam the Ram dance. And I'm like, this is just crazy, man. And there are lessons even in something like that, right? Like I think just as long as you can, when you have the freedom, I think just taking the chance to take chances and just learn as much as you can about different things you do. And you'll be doing things sometimes that you don't want to do. And that is the nature of the game sometimes, like James was saying, where not every job is going to be a passion job, but just keeping that larger vision in mind for how this can apply to that passion job is very important. Don't ever get lost in that, like engage in the hustle, but don't get so lost in the hustle that you lose your vision for your own life and where you want to go with it.
And to piggyback off that, I would also say just like don't shrink your expectations of what you want your dreams to be, because I think it's very easy to do, even with that, like as you're going about life and you know you are working, and you will work some jobs that will be completely like, you'll be like this was not what this was like, is this what all that cash paid for up at CSU? You'll be in some situations like that. But I think to just keep like looking at it as a stepping stone to something greater. But again, do not shrink your expectations of the goals that you have for yourself, because it's very easy to do, like when life is beating you up, to shrink your expectations of like what you want to be so that they fit into, you know, something like smaller. I would just say don't do that. I would also say, like for me, I think like I wish that I think I wish that I had gone to graduate school sooner than I did, because you know, I think that the one of the best things about college is being able to like be around other people that have I feel like one of the biggest advantage college has is being around a bunch of people who don't know any better. So they think they think bigger. They believe that you can just do anything and everything. And I think that's the thing that is again the nugget. That's the nugget. That's the beauty of it. And just, I don't know. I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's a great point, and I'd suggest too, like James was saying, don't lose that entirely too, right? Once you leave here, don't lose that impulse to think outside of your comfort zone or your immediate needs or what your long-term goals are.
Yes, for sure.
Thank
Matt,
you.
Go ahead, Matt.
So James, you talked about this a little bit earlier, but through like your entrepreneurship, and Anthony, through your film and production, I can assume that while it's very like individual based, you still need to look for that like outside help. So what are some keys that you guys have found to creating and maintaining connections within a professional network?
Like, you mean as far as I mean, just keeping going? I don't know, man. Like, are you talking about post-COVID or pre-COVID?
Well, yeah. Let's go pre-COVID, because hopefully we're going to be there soon.
Sure. Well, for me, I mean, I think it was very important to me to like pick up the phone, man. I know that that, you know, we're in this, like, you know, we text people sometimes because we really like text people because we don't want to sit on the phone and actually talk to people and find out how they're doing. I think that it's so important to like pick up the phone and call like people out there and just let them know that you are thinking about them. To me, I feel like when people know that you are actually like thinking about them, that you want to actually connect with them, and that you're not just like using them to get to the next like big thing. I think that I think people will come to your aid, people will help you. And like, I have found that any endeavor that I've gone on, like there's been so many times where like I couldn't, you know, afford to pay somebody to do the work, but I had a buddy who would just do it on the strength, you know what I mean? Because they had love for me, and they wanted to help me out. So I just think that it's just like the calling, the checking, the going out to have a drink, like the going to having a bite to eat, like those things matter. And I don't think that in this day and age, we always want to, like, you know, move through the world so quickly that we don't do that enough. And I think that those are the things that really, really matter. Like, believe me, it matters to you. You think that it does. It matters to people when you actually call them instead of just texting them. People want to talk. They want to engage. And I think that we need to do more of that. And to me, that's been the greatest benefit that I've ever had is my relationships. So
I would say, to add to that too, I once heard a quote from one of the great coaches of our time, or before our time, John Wooden, where he said, be concerned more about your character than your reputation, because your reputation is who people think you are. Your character is who you really are. And so I like to think about doing things the right way, even when someone's not looking. And we're in an age in which, you know, when you do things the right way, you do stand out that way, because so many people are taking shortcuts and being unethical. But to be an ethical, good person in this world is in itself an accomplishment, and something that does put you ahead of the curve in the long run. People will maybe go faster taking shortcuts, but you'll go further in the sense that once you get somewhere, you're steady because you know who you are and you can look in the mirror. Along with that, to add color to something else I said about adding value, just being sure that, you know, I don't like to go in a room and ask favors again. And from a business standpoint, people don't owe you anything. And I think the quicker you realize that, the better. But if you can begin to speak to businesses in a way that's like, this is how this can increase your ROI as a company, and this is what I can do here to make this project better, that's going to benefit this company, and really begin to express yourself in a way where it's less about asking favors and more about again, adding value, I think is a good habit to know all the way from, I mean, that you can apply this to writing a resume, right? So this is a really practical thing. When you write your resume, nobody cares about the task that you performed at your last company. You know, a task-oriented bullet point is, I did X, Y, and Z, you know, and it's like, who cares? That is much different than I was able to lead a team of 50 people on this particular set of projects that eventually helped us to have a award-winning or break records with our Q1 goals and bring this amount into the company, right? Like framing your resume in terms of what you achieved and what the company achieved because of you, and less about your task, is just one way you can apply this. But there's a lot of ways that you can apply that same principle of adding value wherever you go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and Peter, did you still have your question?
Yeah, I do. I know we only have literally 2 minutes, but Anthony, you mentioned some advice regarding this, but as owners of both of James and Anthony, of your guys' small business, what are some questions that you ask in interviews? And what do you value? Again, you guys touched on this a lot, and do you guys have any interview advice specifically of who you look for? Yeah.
I look for a lot of things. I think so to me, it's character, confidence, and chemistry are three of the main things. Like, is this someone that's solid I can depend on? Is this someone who has the skill to do the job? And is this someone I want to take a road trip with one day? If God forbid we're stuck in a car for 8 hours, is this someone I'd want to hang out with? And so just those three things together have helped me select a lot of people. One thing I will always ask or try to get at is when asking about someone's weaknesses or strengths, I know that they're only going to self-report so much, but references do matter. And so sometimes we'll put a reference on there and we think that, they're never going to call them. Good people will call your references, and they'll ask questions in a way where, they'll find out a lot about you through those people. And so just making sure to put up the right references as well is a good way to make sure that you are giving yourself the best chance of success. Do the little things, right? So if there's a deadline as far as getting the application in, get that application in. Send a thank you note. Thank you for your time when interviewing me. Tell your story well, your personal story well, and it goes a long way.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Anthony said, I mean, the character piece is huge. One thing that I would just tell young people specifically is when you're walking through this life, man, do not allow people to mess up your reputation, and do not do irreparable harm to your reputation. I mean, we all make mistakes. We all are out there, wanting to have fun. But just your reputation does matter. Character does matter. For me, I've worked in, when I had my traffic control business, I mean, it was a lot of construction type workers. So I didn't deal with a lot of college educated workers under me. I mean, the people that I dealt with, most of the time it was me giving them a second chance after they had already gotten in trouble. So there's a different kind of work pool that you have to deal with than something that Anthony had. I mean, it was a lot different. But what I would say, even with that, is that people make mistakes. People are dynamic. So, the mistakes that some of the people who made that I hired, those mistakes don't have to limit their trajectory either. You know what I mean? They deserve the respect and the same. They would deserve the same amount of respect that one of you young people would have coming in. I mean, they deserve the same thing. I mean, they have a story also. But I would just say tell the truth, man. Always tell the truth. It matters. And don't like it's okay if the truth doesn't always make you look the best in the story. You know what I mean? But tell the truth.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much, James. Like to quote you, I think these are all little nuggets of information, so very valuable.
All right. Thank you, James. Thank you, Anthony, so much for joining us this class session. Thanks to my students for your questions and your attention. If you can, give me a visible sign of appreciation to our guests. Thank you all so much for, yeah, there's the clap icon. All right, we'll see you folks next week, Monday. Thanks again to Anthony Grimes and James Crowe, our two distinguished alum for the session. Hope to keep in touch with you folks. Thanks, Carol, for putting this together for us, our alumni coordinator. And take care. We'll see you folks again soon.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.